songs were 1,005. The book of Proverbs contains about 800 of Solomon's Proverbs. That's how many of his Proverbs God chose to be a part of the Bible. But to think that he spoke 3,000 Proverbs is an amazing thing. And verse 34 of 1 Kings chapter 4 says, "And there came of all people to hear the wisdom of Solomon, from all kings of the earth which had heard of his wisdom." So everyone wanted to hear the wisdom of Solomon, even the kings of the earth. That should give us some idea of how valuable his Proverbs were. And we're very fortunate people because we have about 800 of those Proverbs today that are written for us in the book of Proverbs that we can study and meditate upon to make our lives more like God would have them to be. We all know that in many places of the Bible, there is a great contrast between the wise and the foolish. Well, we know Proverbs contains the wise sayings of Solomon. What it will take for us to be wise in the sight of God. And so these Proverbs are extremely important to each one of us as we strive to please God on a daily basis. And so tonight, when I tell you that I want to talk about 7 of these, certainly this is just a drop in the bucket of the wise sayings of Solomon. But looking at these 7 gives us some idea of how great his Proverbs are and how much wisdom is contained in them. And so that's what I want us to do. If you would like, please turn to the book of Proverbs, either on your phone or in your Bible. And I want to begin with the 7 in Proverbs 1 and verse 7, where Solomon said, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." Now, what I immediately think about when I read Proverbs 1 and verse 7 is that you have not been properly educated unless you have been taught to fear the Lord. And this statement actually ought to be at the beginning of every textbook in our land, where when our kids get old enough to go to school, this is the first thing that they're going to see, that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, that you have not received a proper education unless you have been taught to fear God. And we all know to fear God means that you have such reverence for him, you have such respect for him, you stand in awe of him to the degree that you don't want to do anything to displease him. You recognize him as your maker, as your creator. You recognize the fact that your very breath is in his hands and that he sustains your life. And you also recognize the fact that he will be the one that will end it all. That at the end of time, he will send his son Jesus, to judge the entire world. And we recognize also that the greatest of all days will be when we are able to enter into heaven and spend eternity with God. That's amazing, isn't it? That is amazing. And so this is a great saying of Solomon from the book of Proverbs. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Notice he went on to say in the next phrase, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Fools do not want to be taught. Fools do not want to hear the wise sayings of God through Solomon. They actually despise wisdom and instruction. And we know what that's going to do to their lives. And we know where they're going to spend eternity because of that. And so, what a great saying of Solomon. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The second one that I want to draw your attention to tonight is in Proverbs chapter 3. This is a passage that you have probably memorized. If you ask a general audience, what are your favorite verses of the Bible? Many people would answer Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. Certainly these are great sayings or great proverbs of Solomon. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. 4 phrases in these great words of Solomon. 1, trust in the Lord with all of your heart. You know who he is. You know he's the creator. You know that all blessings come from him. You know that he rules this world. You know that he rules your life. So trust in him with all of your heart. And when you do that, you will find great peace and happiness. Then that second phrase, and lean not unto thine own understanding. It's not in man that walketh to direct his steps. If we try to do it on our own, we'll get in all kinds of problems and have troubles and difficulties. We don't need to lean on our own understanding. We need to lean on the wisdom of God. In other words, the wise sayings of God that will give us that meaningful and good life. Then that next statement, in all thy ways acknowledge him. He's the one that you want to guide your life, your ways on a daily basis. And he is a part of everything that you do. You acknowledge him in everything that you do, and you ask for his will in everything that you do. That's how comprehensive this is. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and then that fourth phrase, and he shall direct thy paths. He will give you the guidance that you need to navigate through this life. And you will be able to travel this life in a successful, meaningful way if you allow him to direct your paths. And that means that, according to Jesus in Matthew 7, 13 and 14, you will walk the straight and narrow way instead of the broad and wide way. And that straight and narrow way will lead to life. And that's the focus and the purpose of all of our lives. So obviously, Solomon